for, like I say, I keep saying RG3 because that's a recipe for that right there to happen. And then what is everybody saying? Right now you're going, well, we don't know what Manziel can do. Well, at least you have the chance to find out what Manziel can do. Because if Manziel gets torn up like RG3, then the forever comment will be, we don't know what he could have done before he got hurt. I'm just saying, because that's forever going to be the story on RG3 is the second half of his career after the first 10 games or whatever it was looked so pretty.
Yeah, I think actually, Jerry, you know, this will probably scare the Manziel mafia here, but I actually think that this year has gone like as well as it possibly could for Johnny Manziel.
Yep.
Because he hasn't played. Because, I mean, again, if Cleveland knows anything about quarterbacks, they also know everything about ruining quarterbacks. And, you know, since '99, every quarterback that's been drafted has probably been rushed in. And for the first time ever, this guy is not getting rushed. No matter where you come out on whether he, you know, should have won the job, whether he should be in by now, whether he should be starting Sunday, no matter what you think, you know, good, bad, or indifferent, I mean, you can't argue the fact that this kid is getting time to learn. You know, this would still only be his fourth year out of high school. We know all the stories about his playbook and, you know, and lack thereof at A&M. But, you know, to me, I think the other thing that kind of gets glossed over from time is, you know, if you go back and you read stories from the combine and the draft and you talk to people, you know, that are familiar with Johnny Manziel, the kid's supposed to be pretty smart. And so I would say for all those reasons, if he started Sunday, you know, great. He's got 12 weeks, which is probably just about more than anybody has had as a Browns quarterback. And if he gets the rest of the year to sit on the bench, I think that's great too. I think unless you're related to a Hoyer, I think at this point you can probably see that Brian Hoyer is not the second coming of Joe Montana or somebody that's going to be a top tier level quarterback. Now, if you don't think Johnny's going to be, I mean, that's your opinion. But I think it's fair at this point to think that Johnny's high end is much higher than Hoyer's high end, and you're giving your young rookie quarterback all of the best opportunity to reach that high end. Now, if he comes out and he falls on his face, you gave him the best shot you could, just like anybody else. And, you know, I mean, at some point, I think Johnny's going to get his chance, whether it's, you know, later this year or next year. But, I mean, if Johnny doesn't play, you know, meaningful time in this entire season, I think there's still a very good chance that he's the starting quarterback of this team next year. And what's wrong with that? That he has an entire season and off season to prepare and come in probably as the starter. I mean, again, that would be a better opportunity and chance than any Browns quarterback has probably had since Bernie Kosar.
Oh, I hear you. I've talked about that. People don't want to hear that either, but yeah, that's to his benefit, especially coming from, you know, needing to learn the things that he needed to learn. The only thing I disagree with what you said there is you look at Brian Hoyer differently than I do.
You do think Brian Hoyer is just like Joe Montana?
No, but I do think his ceiling is higher than what you just when I look at Brian Hoyer much more like a rookie quarterback with experience. I look at him like a rookie that played all 4 years in college kind of thing, played more than the rest of them. That a more experienced rookie because of the amount of actual playing time in the NFL. It's easy to look at the years and not look at what he's done in that. So if you look at him as a finished product, I 100% agree with what you said. I was just talking about this a couple of days ago. If you look at Hoyer as a finished product, then yeah, he's cast in stone. And of course, you want to see what you've got in Manziel. I look at Hoyer as somebody who also can improve, who also has a high ceiling of improvement that he can do.
Well, he can definitely improve because I was just going to say, if you don't think he's a finished product, he's going backwards because he's getting worse, not better.
No, and I agree with that. And that's why I'm just saying that I look at that part differently. So I don't necessarily say that his ceiling isn't also a lot left to be discovered there. And it just depends what kind of quarterback you like as well. You know, what kind would you like to develop? Because they're both going to take resources to develop. They both bring different skill sets to the table. They both bring different risks to the table. But anyways, that is what it is, man. And this is all a lot of interesting discussion, by the way, as we roll into hour 2. Sports Fix rolling on. Welcome those of you guys that continue to join us. We've had people jumping in throughout the show here. And Mike Brandenberry from Did the Tribe Win Last Night.com joining us here. Supposed to talk some Indians. Ended up talking about the sociological debates of Johnny Manziel versus Brian Hoyer and all of that. So I don't know. Do we segue away here? Do we dare segue away here and talk a little bit? Not a lot. As you said, Indians don't even give you a lot to dive into right now as they continue to kind of pick and parcel their way through things, just waiting to see what all goes down and what's left. But I don't know if I mentioned it yet today on the show. I think I did earlier. Tomorrow, Tom Hamilton's going to join us. First chance I've gotten to sit down and talk to Hammy, the voice of the Indians, and looking forward to that one here. Of course, his new book with Terry Pluto, and you guys know I love everything Terry Pluto writes, whether you guys agree with him in The Plain Dealer or not. All of his actual book enterprises are always fantastic with me, and this one, no doubt. I don't know if you got a chance to read it yet, Glory Days in Tribe Town. Did you get a chance to read it yet, Mike?
I have read some, not all. We ran an excerpt from the book, Manny Being Manny, on our site. His publishing company and Terry Pluto and Tom Hamilton asked if we would run it, and we were happy and honored to. And I've read that, and I have a copy of the book, and I've read some of it, bits and pieces, and it's surreal, I think, is the best way to describe it for myself, having lived it. And I think, some of it, maybe for me, I was a teenager at the time. And so, I mean, there are those memories myself as, being a kid and growing up. In 95, I was a junior in high school. And,
I was right there with you, brother.
The memories of that season and those players, not even just that year, but especially of that year, and the players and the impact that I guess I don't even know if impact's the right word, but the memories created for myself and my family, and being a lifelong Indians fan, everything that led to that moment and the things that happen afterwards. It's a really good book, and I think no matter where you were at any point in your life, I think you can kind of make those connections, because that team was so special, and they kind of really burst onto the scene. And we know all of the perfect storm analogies, but it really was a perfect storm, and it took this town by storm. And I think for those reasons, so many people have their own personal memories and ties to players and moments and events. And I think what makes the book kind of at least unique for me is you have all of your own memories and events, and then you get a little bit of a little bit of insight or a little bit of backstory. And I think there are different stories there told, by Terry Pluto and Tom Hamilton that maybe we all didn't get to see each day that they were lucky enough to see.
Absolutely, and that's one of the great things about this here for those of you guys. And I mentioned it before. They ran not just your sites. I know the Plain Dealer ran a little pullout with a couple of excerpt chapters from it as well, and a couple of other sites as well too. But yeah, and I'm looking forward to it. I've gotten a chance to talk to all kinds of people over the years, and great guys and different announcers for all the teams. But Hammy's on one of the ones on the short list of guys that I haven't gotten a chance to, and I'm literally sitting here going, man, okay. Sometimes, it's easy to this is easy, but it's so easy it's difficult at the same time. And I think you may understand what I mean by this from interviewing folks when, some guys, you got an idea of where you're going to go and the things you're going to talk about. And then there's some guys where you go, Okay, how do I not just ask 8,000 questions and go in 800 different directions? And how does this not last 3 hours? Because you can just ask so many things. You can go so many ways. Because as you said, you've not only got the stories that we can all just talk about. You and I can sit here for an hour and just drop stuff. And then you've got the stories behind the stories as well that come from being inside the looking glass like Tom Hamilton is.
Yeah, and I think you're right, especially when it comes to Hammy, and by nature in his job, he is so very talkative and great at telling a story. And when you were talking about that in interviews, I think we've talked quite a bit on this show. For me, I've been really fortunate to talk with Francisco Lindor a number of times, and he is the same way. I mean, he's very articulate. He shares a lot, and he's very intelligent, and he's a person you just want to be around. And if you have time to those people, no matter who they are, I think there are people that you just want to be around. And if you get the opportunity to ask 5 questions, you always wish you had a 6th, and if you had 6, you wish you had a 7th, and it doesn't matter how much time you have, you could always come up with more. And I think Tom Hamilton is one of those guys, but the 95 Indians as a topic is one of those too. And so I think the combination really kind of makes that a pretty unique and special opportunity.
Absolutely. You're listening to the Sports Fix. J-Rock talking to my man Mike Brandenberry from DidTheTribeWinLastNight.com, and all kinds of things. Like we said, looking at the insight and different things. Like at one point, I don't know, this was maybe about 2/3 of the way through the book. At one point, I know they were talking about Eddie Murray and his time with the Indians, and there's a lot of things that come with that. People know the good and the bad that come with him, how he was with the media, and so sports writers didn't like him. But you hear different things. Like Tom Hamilton talked about how much he enjoyed just watching Eddie Murray take batting practice every day, and how he had his routine, and how he'd start by going to the opposite field, and he'd have a whole series of deals where he hit the ball that way. Then he'd move to the middle of the field and follow the same sequence. Then he would go to pulling the ball, and he didn't go out there like some of the guys. And we remember those. Remember how talking about being in that age group and going to those games. The pregame, the batting practice was like a little mini home run derby every day. Guys would be out there trying to jack the ball out for the fans during that, and he talked about how impressed he was that a guy like Eddie Murray didn't get into the gaga. He had this routine that he had, and he went about it every day. And by watching him in batting practice, you learn how a guy honed his craft at hitting the ball the way that Eddie Murray did. But not only that, he said you started to notice, it took a minute to catch on, Manny Ramirez, Albert Bell, those guys are now following Eddie Murray out to batting practice and following his example. And a lot of that rubs off into how a natural hitter like Manny Ramirez picks up the practice habits that helped him become the guy that he became, even with all of his Manny being Manny. But, little insights like that are the things that are great takeaways, besides just the, hey, I remember when Kenny did this, and I remember when the banner went up, and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, as time gets away from us and 1995 gets older and older and farther away, I think our memories of that year, or of the players themselves and how they played those seasons, kind of get lost. I mean, I think it's easy to think of Jim Thome and Manny Ramirez as the players that they were for maybe, most of their career, or after they left Cleveland. Both really kind of turned into home run hitters, and, Thome probably more, pull hitters. But like you said, those guys, they sprayed the ball around the park, and that was the kind of thing, without pulling up spray charts and fan graphs on the 95 Indians. If you took that team and you brought them to the modern day, I jokingly tell people, when Ken Burns does an 11th inning of baseball, it the era is going to be, you know, when the computer geeks fight back after the steroids, and you know, and all of your sabermetrics.
Yep.
But if you look at the '95 Indians and you look at things just like you talked about with Eddie Murray and spraying the ball, you know, that's a team that really could, you know, despite not winning the World Series, could